Have you ever taken a bite of pie and instantly known something was wrong? Not because it was burnt, not because it was spoiled, but because it was no longer itself. That morning, wearing a plain white shirt and the old leather watch his mother once gave him, Nathan Leclair walked into Leclair Maison, the upscale bakery bearing his name, nestled in the heart of bustling Greenwich Village. No employee recognized him, and none needed to, because he wasn't there to be welcomed, he was there to investigate, something that had kept him awake for weeks. From the outside, the store looked as pristine as ever. Fresh peonies on marble tables, warm golden lighting, gently spilling over the pastry displays. But to Nathan, something felt too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that signified elegance, but the kind that reeked of pretense. "I'll have a slice of la tarte de mer," he said softly, ordering the apple tart that had become a cornerstone of the family legacy. The young staff member nodded, didn't look up, didn't say a word. He had no idea the man standing in front of him had kneaded that dough by hand for 20 years to keep the recipe untouched through generations. The tart arrived. A golden brown crust, braided edges like vintage lace, a scoop of vanilla ice cream melting quietly at its side. By appearance, nothing seemed amiss, but Nathan wasn't using his eyes. He used his nose and his memory. The cinnamon is off, the apple off. Something was too sweet, too smooth, too flimsy. He took a fork, sliced a perfect circle. The filling oozed out. There were no apple slices, just a glossy amber-colored gel, artificial and smooth, gleaming like road-sealed tar. He took a bite and froze. No one needed to explain. No test was necessary. Nathan knew this wasn't his mother's pie. This wasn't Leclair Maison's pie. This was a lie wrapped in buttercrust, served on a fine, white porcelain plate. And worse, it had been served to thousands of customers. He once promised, "We use only real ingredients. We never change." He didn't get angry, didn't shout. He simply lifted the napkin beneath the plate and found a small label clearly printed apple filling. Elan Produce Imports. That name had never existed in any of Leclerc's official supplier records. In that moment, Nathan was no longer a customer, nor a CEO. He was a son staring at a slice of what used to be family memory and realizing someone had sold out the promise his mother had sealed inside every crisp layer of crust. He set down his fork, pulled out his phone, and began recording, because he knew if he didn't speak up, no one would ever realize. A lie was being baked fresh every day in the very house that bore his name. As the soft chime of the front door welcomed a new couple into the bakery, Nathan Leclair quietly slipped into a corner table near the window. He didn't have to do anything special to blend in. No one inside the staff or the customers knew that the man gently stirring his glass of ice water was the very founder of the bakery they worked at or visited. He had once believed that after 25 years at the helm, he could step back, that the management team would carry on the philosophy of honesty in every slice. But today he realized a single compromised recipe could begin with one person and spread through the entire system, Nathan observed. With eyes familiar with every detail of the walnut tables and the angled displays, he began noticing things he had never wanted to see. A smudge of cream lingered at the edge of the counter, untouched. The digital menu screen, still playing a holiday promo from last season. An employee is fixing her uniform bow tie in the mirror instead of watching the guests. Everything seemed fine, but something felt off. He glanced quickly at the label he had photographed earlier, Elan Produce Imports. A strange name. Too slick, too polished. But he knew the truth often hides behind shiny surfaces. He opened his messages, and typed to Vivian Cho Leclair, HQ's Director of Compliance. Look up this supplier. Need to know registration ID, origin region. Is it on the approved vendor list? Less than 2 minutes later, the 3 dots appeared. Then came a message brief as a blade slicing through his patience. Not on the list. The company was registered less than 2 years ago. Legal rep Mathieu Varnier. Varnier. That name thickened the air. Celeste Varnier, the manager of Leclerc's Greenwich branch, praised in 3 consecutive internal reports for maintaining stable profits during inflation storms. A woman is always described as composed, meticulous, and highly efficient. But now Nathan began to wonder where that efficiency had come from. Was she cutting costs by skirting the system? Was Elan Produce just a shell company? Were customers employees, and even Nathan himself, being deceived day by day with artificially sweetened fillings? He inhaled deeply, gripping the glass in his hand. And for the first time in many years, he felt his heartbeat change, not from fear, but from fury. Not anger about the pie, but about the fact that someone believed he would never return. No one recognized him today, but that was his greatest advantage. An anonymous owner, a deceitful slice, a promise betrayed. And now, it was time to unravel everything. The landline rang a clear chime that struck precisely at the nerves of those hiding something. Through the frosted glass of the office door, Nathan Leclair saw Celeste Varnier pick up the receiver with a hint of hesitation. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if her instincts told her something wasn't right. Leclair Greenwich, this is Celeste, speaking. How may I help you? His voice on the line was quiet, frighteningly so. Celeste, this is Nathan Leclair. I'm seated at table number 4 by the window. I was just served a slice of la tarte de mer, filled with a product from Elan Produce Imports. We need to talk. Right now. In that instant, her gaze lifted from the desk, skimmed across the dining room, then locked. He was right there, not as the CEO. No bodyguards, no announcements, just a calm man raising his hand in greeting. And Celeste froze like a wax figure under a spotlight. Of course, Mr. Leclair, I'll be right out. 1 minute later, Celeste emerged with measured steps, her hair neat, her usual faint smile intact. But Nathan didn't need more than a glance to know she was worried, deeply worried. What an honor. Had I known in advance you didn't. He cut in gently, but firmly. Sit down. She sat, her shoulders tense slightly. Her eyes flicked toward the kitchen, where a few employees pretended not to notice. Nathan slid the tart plate toward her. Try it, he said. She hesitated, then sliced off a small piece, bit into it slowly, chewed longer than necessary. A bit sweeter than usual, but sometimes batches vary slightly. No, Nathan said coldly. No batch uses syrup instead of fresh apples. No recipe includes thickening agents you're too afraid to label. And there is no acceptable explanation for why an Elan Produce label was under my napkin. He placed the label gently in the center of the table. Celeste looked at it, then raised her eyes. Her voice had lost its calmness. There were issues with our traditional suppliers. Inflation is rising freight costs. I understand pressure, Nathan replied, but pressure doesn't permit deception, and it certainly doesn't justify building an underground supply network run by your own brother. Celeste fell silent. The question in her throat was cut off before it formed. I already have the evidence, Celeste, but this is your last chance to speak the truth. Where would you like to begin? Outside customers continued to enjoy their pastries, unaware that a storm was quietly gathering, just beneath the flaky crust. As Celeste walked away from the table with a stiff nod and shoulders heavy as stone, Nathan Leclair remained seated in silence. In front of him sat a half-eaten slice of apple tart, a wrinkled napkin, and a question echoing in his mind. How long has it been? He carefully gathered the tart sample, the label, and the leftover filling, sealing everything in a scent-proof zip bag. To him, this wasn't just evidence. This was the first piece of a betrayal needed from flour and trust. That evening, inside the suite at the Whitmore Hotel, where he had once hosted some of his most important deals, Nathan placed the bag on the marble table, turned on the warm amber light, poured a glass of cold water, and called the only person he trusted in food analysis, Dr. Elodie Moreau. 45 minutes later, 3 soft knocks at the door. Elodie arrived with a compact black lab case, precise and professional. Without needing a word, she put on gloves, set up the microscope, test strips, and molecular composition analyzer. Reference sample, Retian 3.7, the National Apple Tart formula from 2011, he replied. The machine whirred to life. The screen displayed 2 color-coded graphs, one for the original recipe, one for the tart from the Greenwich store. As the figures lined up, Elodie pointed to each reading. Protein levels are off by nearly 40%. All natural sugars have been replaced with industrial-grade glucose. And here, she paused, carboxymethylcellulose, a thickening agent banned in baby food across Europe and strictly regulated in the US. Nathan gripped the arm of his chair. He said nothing, just stared at the amber gel under the microscope. It shimmered, artificial, dangerous. Right then Vivian called. Her voice was urgent. We rechecked the Greenwich branch's delivery logs. Result, not a single official shipment in the past 5 months. And the money Nathan asked, transferred regularly, split into amounts just below audit thresholds. Authorized by Celeste Varnier. Nathan stood, eyes returning to the tart, still wearing its flawless outer crust. This isn't just a case of ingredient substitution, he said slowly. We're looking at a parallel system, a full-scale operation, with fake suppliers, covert transactions, and a lie being baked daily. And no one knew. Elodie nodded, packing up her tools. I'll prepare a full report, but if you're asking me whether this is real food… She looked at him, not a trace of hesitation. No, this isn't food. This is a chemical shaped into memory. Early the next morning, before the first light had touched the glass panes of Leclair Maison Greenwich, Nathan Leclair was already standing at the door. But this time, no white shirt or handcrafted leather shoes. Instead, he wore a standard inspector's uniform navy polo shirt, khaki trousers, a clipboard in hand, and a plastic name badge reading Delacroix, Quality Assurance. And just as he hoped, no one recognized him. Good morning, sir. A young man greeted him with a slightly nervous smile. His name was Evan, a temporary inventory clerk. Miss Celeste hasn't arrived yet. I've been assigned to assist with the inspection today. Very well, Nathan nodded. I'll need access to the storage system, raw ingredient inventory delivery logs, and supplier files. I won't interrupt store operations. Evan led him through a narrow hallway behind the kitchen, an area most customers never saw. But Nathan knew the truth was often hidden behind pretty layers of butter and the comforting scent of cinnamon. Inside the cold storage, he found the first thing that made his throat tighten. On one side, official ingredient crates with Leclair branding and clear QR codes. On the other hand, plain white boxes unmarked except for handwritten codes in Sharpie EL02, EL05, EL07. No testing needed. Nathan knew instantly these were from Elon Produce. He took photos, made notes, requested to inspect all currently used batches, apple filling crust dough cream blends. All of them were inconsistent, non-standard, non-compliant. Afterward, He returned to the staff break room, where Evan helped organize shift interviews for routine protocol. Most staff answered suspiciously fluently. "Everything's fine, sir. We trust Miss Celeste's system. Ingredients always meet standards, I believe." But the tone was identical. The word choices, the downward glances, the awkward pauses, all told Nathan one thing. Someone had coached them to say this, until a young woman stepped in uniform, neat, but her backpack still on her shoulders. Her name was Aria Lynn. "How long have you been working here?" Nathan asked. 3 weeks, sir. This is my first job since graduation." Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't flinch. And when Nathan gently asked, "Is there anything about the store that feels not quite right?" Aria gripped her backpack strap, looked toward the door. "Ms. Celeste told us not to post anything online, not to talk to customers about the ingredients, and especially not to ask questions about the white boxes. Last week, someone did ask. 2 days later, he was reassigned to clean the bathrooms, and then vanished from the schedule." Nathan stopped writing. He simply nodded. "Thank you. And thank you for having the courage to be honest," because he knew a company can survive a scandal. But if silence is used as a shield, it is no longer a business. It becomes a system of fear. That afternoon, Nathan Leclair left the Greenwich store under the name Inspector Delacroix, a folder in hand, his thoughts weighed down as if by 100 layers of pastry. He said nothing to Celeste. He didn't need to. The game had only just begun, and he needed to know how many others were playing it with her. Back at the temporary office on the 32nd floor of Leclair Central, he sat before 3 large monitors where the internal investigation team was already waiting. "All information gathered from Greenwich is ready," Sir Vivian said slowly. "But we've just discovered something much bigger." She tapped a key. A chart appeared, lines in red, blue, and purple, crisscrossed like a web. Since January, the payment systems of 11 branches across New York, Chicago, and Boston have recorded over 90 transactions directed to vendors not on the approved supplier list. Nathan held his breath. Is there a common link between those locations? All fall under the Northeast Regional Management System, and all had. Celeste Varnier is involved in either management recruitment or staff rotation. Her network didn't end with one bakery. She had built an empire within an empire, using the illusion of stable profit to mislead the leadership board. Nathan called an emergency meeting. On screen appeared the faces of regional directors, some confused, others suspiciously silent. Then he played a hidden camera clip from Greenwich Celeste. Holding a list, whispered to the head chef, "If you want to keep your position, don't ever ask me about those boxes again. I'll make sure your salary goes up if you know how to stay quiet." The room froze. Someone sighed. Another looked away. And one Boston's regional director quietly pulled his security badge from his jacket and placed it on the table. "I resign. I can't keep pretending I didn't know." Nathan didn't stop him, because he knew truth comes at a price, and now was the time to pay. That night, he sat alone in the office, staring at the miniature model of the Leclair store network, mounted on the wall, each glowing dot representing a location, a person, a promise made to every customer. And now part of that map had gone dark. Tomorrow, he said to himself, I'll go back, but not as an inspector, not as the CEO. I'll return as the founder, and I will clean every corner of this darkness with my own hands. Because sometimes, to save what you've built, the one who created it must be the first to step into the shadows. 6 a.m. While most of the city still slumbered under the dim glow of streetlights, a fleet of unmarked black vehicles silently pulled up in front of 3 Leclair Bakery branches across New York. No sirens, no warnings, only the steady echo of footsteps on stone sidewalks. At each location, a small team stepped out: senior internal inspectors, independent auditors, and cybersecurity specialists. All carried a special audit order personally signed by CEO Nathan Leclair the night before. At the Greenwich branch, where it all began, Celeste Varnier had just walked through the staff entrance, coffee still steaming in hand, phone untouched, when the office door swung open. A man in a grey suit name badge, reading Chief Auditor, Leclair Group, looked at her and said calmly, "We need your cooperation," starting with delivery logs, personnel files, and the complete order chain for the past 6 months. Under whose authority, she asked, narrowing her eyes. The man said nothing. He simply held up a tablet. On the screen was Nathan Leclair's signature, bold beneath the header, Operation Clean Crust, immediate audit authorization. Within the hour, all unidentified shipments were confiscated. Security cameras were cross-checked against shift records. Celeste's computer was sealed for data analysis. Deleted emails, all recovered by IT specialists. And the worst part for Celeste was that she had no idea Nathan was just 12 meters away, sitting in a small conference room, watching every moment unfold through the internal surveillance system. At the northern branch, another surprise emerged. While reviewing archived footage, the inspection team uncovered an unreported recording: Celeste speaking with a young man, her brother, the one behind the middleman company supplying cheap off-brand ingredients. "I told you, just keep things quiet. Nathan never leaves his office in Chicago. He's old, no way, he's out there snooping around small bakeries." That sentence, broadcast in the temporary control room, drew silence from everyone. Nathan didn't flare up. He simply leaned back in his chair, eyes distant, as if confirming something he had long suspected: Celeste hadn't just betrayed the system. She had scorned the very soul he had spent a lifetime building. At 10 a.m., Celeste walked into the meeting room where Nathan awaited her. No smile, no straight posture, no lifted chin. "I didn't think you'd come all the way here." "I did," Nathan replied, "because you forgot the most important thing. What we serve isn't just pastry. It's the trust of an entire generation." He handed her a sealed envelope. "Immediate suspension. You have the right to remain silent. But to me, your silence has already said enough." 3 days after the full system audit, the name Leclair Bakery dominated headlines, from business columns to lifestyle features. The banners kept coming: high-end pastry chain accused of ingredient fraud. CEO Nathan Leclair personally exposes internal scandal. An empire that stayed silent until today. That afternoon, during a modest press conference broadcast nationwide, Nathan stepped forward in a charcoal gray suit. No nameplate, no assistance. He didn't read from a statement. He simply spoke the way a father speaks to grown children. "I don't stand here as a CEO. I stand here as the man who baked the very first Leclair pie with his own hands in an 11-square-meter kitchen behind my house." His voice was steady, his gaze resting on every journalist, every camera lens. "We uncovered a fraudulent network. Sadly, it was led by someone I once trusted completely. But when trust is betrayed, it shouldn't be patched over with silence. It should be answered with action." Then he looked up. "And so starting today, I officially appoint a new director of the entire Northeastern Division, Aria Lin." A ripple of murmurs spread. Some reporters leaned in, double-checking their notes. A young girl, a recent graduate, an employee who'd barely been there a month. Nathan smiled, because when the whole system chose silence, she alone dared to speak the truth. Not for power, not for money, but for conscience. He turned toward the back of the stage, where Arya stood, her expression overwhelmed, yet her posture straighter than ever. She stepped forward. No elaborate makeup, no grand speech, just a humble bow and a sincere smile. And that was enough. That evening, customers returned to Leclair stores with a different feeling. The pastries still tasted as good, but this time they carried the flavor of honesty. A small sign now hung above the counter. Where did today's ingredients come from? Scan to find out. Every pastry you eat is a promise kept. And Arya, though her hands still trembled slightly while typing her first official report, kept a photo of her mother beside her desk. The woman who once taught her being a good person doesn't always get rewarded, but when it does, use it to make sure others never have to endure worse. Dear friend, if you're still here after everything Arya and Mr. Nathan went through, then this is no longer just a story about pastries. It's a story about the courage to speak up when everyone else chooses silence, about standing up, not to prove you're capable, but to protect what is right. Have you ever felt small within a system? Have you ever been threatened for simply telling the truth? Remember this: you are not alone. And sometimes you, not someone else, are the one who can change everything. If this story touched you, leave a comment and share what it meant to you. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next heart-stirring journey here on Toch Story, where we don't just tell stories to be watched, but to be felt, understood, and to change lives.